The twin moons of Azoria cast rippling silver light across the surface of Lake Lumina, transforming the already strange landscape into something utterly otherworldly. Elian Reed adjusted his atmospheric filter and sighed with quiet contentment. After 6 months on this remote planet, he still found himself awestruck by its beauty. Recording entry 157, he murmured into his datapad. The bioluminescent algae concentration has increased by 17% since last week's rainfall. The color spectrum has shifted notably toward the violet end, suggesting... His voice trailed off as movement on the far shore caught his attention. A slender figure stood motionless at the water's edge, silhouetted against the pulsing glow of the forest beyond. Even from this distance, Elian could tell it wasn't one of his fellow researchers from the Earth Science Coalition outpost. The proportions were similar to human, yet distinctly different, more graceful, more fluid somehow. An Azurian. The indigenous people rarely approached the research station or its scientists. Their civilization was ancient and advanced in ways humans were still struggling to comprehend. Yet they maintained a deliberate distance from Earth's exploratory missions. Curiosity overrode Elan's scientific discipline. Setting aside his equipment, he made his way around the shore, moving carefully over the smooth, iridescent stones. As he drew closer, he could see her more clearly in the moonlight, her skin a soft purple hue that seemed to capture and reflect the bioluminescence of the surrounding environment. Long, silver-white hair cascaded down her back, adorned with tiny crystalline ornaments that chimed softly with each slight movement. She turned before he could announce his presence, her eyes finding his with unsettling precision, almond-shaped, and the deep violet of twilight skies. There was something in those eyes that made Elian's breath catch a depth of knowledge, of experience, of sorrow. "You've been watching our corallis bloom for 17 nights now," she said, her voice melodic despite the slight accent to her universal standard. "Always alone. Always writing in your little machine." Elian felt a flush of embarrassment warm his cheeks. "I didn't realize I was being observed." A smile touched her lips. "All things observe and are observed. Scientists from Earth. It is the way of the universe." "I'm Elian Reed," he offered, stopping a respectful distance away. "I know." Her head tilted slightly, studying him with unnerving intensity. "I am Naira of House Zephyrin." A pause. "Then what was once House Zephyrin?" The subtle shift in her tone told Elian volumes. He had studied enough Azurian culture to recognize the significance. She was identifying herself as the survivor of a fallen lineage, a widow, in Earth terms, though the concept carried far more complex social implications here. "The corallis are beautiful tonight," he said, gesturing to the glowing aquatic flowers that floated on the lake's surface. "I've never seen them this vibrant. They respond to celestial alignment. Tonight, the moons and the distant star, Ariel, create a harmonic resonance that excites the molecular structure." Spoke with casual certainty about phenomena his team had been studying for months. The scientific part of Elian's mind raced with questions. But something else, something more instinctual, kept him silent. Simply absorbing her presence, Naira stepped closer to the water, then glanced back at him. "They will perform their dance soon. Would you care to observe it properly? Your instruments miss much of the significance." Their eyes met again, and Elian felt a strange connection, forming tenuous yet undeniable, like gravity between distant stars. Something about her called to him beyond scientific curiosity or diplomatic protocol. "Join me," Naira whispered. Extending her hand, Elian hesitated only briefly before stepping forward, into the beginning of something he couldn't possibly understand yet. The Imperial throne room aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion hummed with tension. Emperor Vexer sat rigid, his ornate armor reflecting the harsh lighting as officers delivered the catastrophic news. Not only had the human resistance escaped, but Princess Nixar, heir to the Empire and carrier of the pure bloodline, had disappeared with them. "Find them," he commanded, his voice dangerously soft. "Bring my daughter home, and eradicate every human who has corrupted her mind." light years away. The emergency shuttles regrouped at coordinates only rumored in Resistance communications. The hidden outpost known as Sanctuary, built into an asteroid belt circling a dying star, its heat signature masked by stellar radiation. It represented humanity's contingency plan, placed neither on imperial charts nor in official records. Inside the largest habitation dome, representatives from Earth's surviving colonies gathered in stunned silence as Nyxara stood before them, her purple skin luminescent against the stark human architecture. An imperial princess defecting to the Resistance, General Santos said, disbelief evident in her weathered face. "Forgive our skepticism, but this could easily be an elaborate trap." Leah stepped forward. "Without her, none of us would have survived Haven. She risked everything, her position, her future, her life." Nyxara raised her hand for silence. "I don't ask for your trust based on words, General. I offer something more valuable." She activated a small device, projecting detailed schematics into the center of the room. Complete tactical data on Imperial fleet movements, weapon systems, and most importantly, the genetic engineering program that makes my people believe they're destined to rule. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. For the first time, humans could see the entirety of what they faced, but also the Empire's fundamental vulnerabilities. Later, as artificial night fell over the outpost, Elias found Nyxara standing alone on an observation platform, gazing at unfamiliar stars. "Having second thoughts?" he asked gently. She turned to him, silver eyes reflecting pinpoints of light. "Not about my choice, but about who I am now. Neither fully Zephyrian princess, nor accepted human ally." Elias moved beside her, their shoulders touching. "Perhaps you're something new, something better than either alone could be." "My father will never stop hunting us," she said softly. "The Empire's entire philosophy is based on Zephyrian superiority. A princess choosing humanity threatens everything they believe." "Good," Elias replied, taking her hand. His fingers traced the bioluminescent patterns that pulsed beneath her purple skin. Some beliefs deserve to be threatened. Their kiss deepened, no longer tentative, but certain a bridge between worlds that Imperial doctrine had declared incompatible. When they finally separated, Nyxara's entire body glowed with a light that seemed to emanate from within. The Imperial scientists believed they engineered emotion out of the royal bloodline. She whispered against his neck. They were wrong. They merely buried what couldn't be eliminated. Dawn brought news that transformed their personal rebellion into something far greater. 3 Zephyrian scout ships had arrived at Sanctuary not as attackers, but as defectors, inspired by rumors of the princess who chose freedom over empire. As weeks passed, more came not just military personnel, but Zephyrian scientists, artists and civilians, all drawn to the unprecedented concept of cooperation rather than conquest. What had begun as humanity's last stand was evolving into the first true interspecies alliance the galaxy had seen. 6 months after Haven's fall, Nyxara stood with Elias on the bridge of the Convergence, a hybrid vessel combining human adaptability with Zephyrian technology. Behind them, a fleet of similar ships prepared for their most daring mission, returning to Earth itself. "Are you ready?" Elias asked, now wearing the insignia of the Alliance's joint command. Nyxara's fingers interlaced with his, her free hand resting on the tactical display showing Emperor Vexor's blockade of humanity's homeworld. "I was raised to believe that strength comes from domination," she said thoughtfully. "You showed me it comes from connection. Around them, humans worked alongside Zephyrians, their differences becoming their greatest asset, rather than obstacles to overcome. What had begun with a lone human's defiant stand against an alien, Princess had blossomed into something neither civilization had imagined possible. As the fleet prepared to jump to light speed, Elias and Nyxara shared a look that transcended words. 2 beings from across the stars who had found in each other not just passion or alliance, but a new definition of home. "Together, then," she said, her voice carrying the weight of both command and affection. The stars streaked past as the ships accelerated, carrying with them the promise of a future where differences were celebrated rather than conquered, a revolution born not from weapons of war, but from the most powerful force in any galaxy, the capacity to change. The research station's central lab hummed with activity as Elian analyzed his latest samples. His colleagues had noticed the change in him, a new lightness in his step, a distraction in his normally focused demeanor, but attributed it to breakthrough discoveries rather than matters of the heart. "These readings are unprecedented," remarked Dr. Keller, the expedition's botanical specialist, examining Elian's data on the Corallis flowers. "How did you isolate the bioluminescent compound so effectively?" "We've been trying for months." Leon gave a non-committal shrug. "Just a different approach to the extraction process." He couldn't exactly explain that his understanding of Azurian biology had been enhanced by intimate conversations with Naira, whose knowledge of her world's ecosystem far surpassed their most advanced theories. Their relationship had deepened over the past month, evolving into something neither of them had names for in their respective languages. By day, Elian was the dedicated Earth scientist, methodically documenting Azuria's wonders. By night, he was a student of Nira's wisdom and a partner in her gradual emotional reawakening. The station's communication array chimed, interrupting his thoughts. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command," Stoda announced the automated system. Director Harlow emerged from her office, gesturing for the team to gather. "This is the update we've been waiting for," she said, her expression unreadable as always. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern features of Admiral Reeves. "Earth Science Coalition Outpost Azuria 7. This is Command. We've reviewed your preliminary findings and are ... impressed." His tone suggested this admission came reluctantly. "As such, we're expanding your mission parameters and sending additional personnel. The Azurian ecosystem presents unprecedented opportunities for pharmaceutical development." Elian felt a chill despite the lab's carefully regulated temperature. "What kind of expansion are we talking about, sir?" he asked. 30 additional researchers, plus security detail. Your current non-interference protocols will be adjusted to allow for more comprehensive sampling." The Admiral's eyes narrowed slightly. "We've also noticed increased personal contact between certain team members and the indigenous population. While cultural exchange is permitted, remember that your primary loyalty is to Earth and its interests." The implication was clear. Someone had reported Elian's meetings with Naira after the transmission ended. Director Harlow fixed Elian with a pointed stare. "My office, Dr. Reed." Now, behind closed doors, she wasted no time. "Your nocturnal activities haven't gone unnoticed, Elian. Fraternizing with an Azurian noble widow? Do you have any idea of the diplomatic complications you could cause?" "We're just sharing cultural knowledge," he protested, knowing how hollow the half-truth sounded. "Don't insult my intelligence." Harlow sighed, her stern facade cracking slightly. "Look, I understand the appeal. 6 months, on an alien world far from home, connections happen. But House Zephyrin may be diminished now, but it still holds significant influence in certain circles. And Naira herself. There are rumors," Leon frowned. "What kind of rumors?" "That she possesses abilities unusual even among her people. That her bondmate's death wasn't entirely accidental." Harlow leaned forward. "I'm not saying any of this is true, but perception matters in interspecies relations. Command is concerned your objectivity may be compromised." "My research speaks for itself," Elian countered, anger rising. "And Naira has actually enhanced our understanding of." "That's exactly the problem," Harlow interrupted. "You're gaining knowledge through unauthorized channels rather than through diplomatic protocols. Knowledge that Earth can't access equally." As night fell, Elian slipped away from the station, his mind turbulent with conflicting loyalties. The expanded mission would inevitably change everything. Earth's interest in Azuria had clearly shifted from scientific curiosity to resource acquisition. He found Naira waiting by their usual meeting place, but something in her posture told him she already knew. "Your people are sending more observers," she said without preamble. "But not for knowledge's sake." Elian nodded grimly. "How did you find out?" "The Council of Elders was informed through official channels." A sad smile touched her lips. "Did you believe your superiors would keep such plans hidden from us? We may appear detached from your politics, but we are far from ignorant. Naira, I swear I didn't know about this until today." He reached for her hands, relieved when she didn't pull away. "But now that I do, I need to understand what's happening." Director Harlow mentioned rumors about you. About abilities you might have? A flicker of something fear? Resignation? Passed across her features. Walk with me, she said quietly. They ventured deeper into the forest than ever before. Following a path invisible to Elian's eyes but clearly familiar to Naira, the vegetation grew stranger, more ancient, pulsating with subtle energy that made the hair on his arms stand on end. What we share is forbidden not just by your people's protocols, she finally said. My own kind would consider it ... problematic, especially for one of my lineage. They reached a clearing where massive crystal formations erupted from the ground like frozen explosions, each containing swirling colors that moved with apparent sentience. These are memory crystals, Naira explained. The collected experiences of generations of Azurians. My family house Zephyrin were traditionally their keepers. She placed her palm against the nearest formation, which immediately brightened, colors swirling more rapidly. And some of us, a very few, can do more than just preserve memories. As Elian watched in astonishment, the crystal's colors flowed up Naira's arm, transforming her purple skin into a canvas of living light. Her eyes glowed with the same energy, and suddenly the clearing around them shimmered and changed, becoming a different place entirely, a vast chamber of impossible architecture, filled with Azurians dressed in ceremonial attire. What you're seeing happened 8 cycles ago, Naira's voice echoed strangely. My bonding ceremony to Nalarian, the vision was so complete, so immersive, that Elian felt he could reach out and touch the figures moving around him. He saw a younger Naira, her expression serene, but her eyes lacking the depth they now possessed, standing beside a tall, imposing male Azurian whose bearing radiated authority and ambition. You're not just showing me a recording, Elian realized aloud. You're sharing actual memory, making me experience it as you did. The scene shifted, fragmenting into a kaleidoscope of moments: diplomatic meetings, private conversations, arguments that grew increasingly heated, and finally, a devastating notification of death delivered by solemn-faced Azurian officials. Nalarian died, believing he was securing our world's future through alliance with the Tholians. Naira's voice continued as the images faded, returning them to the crystal clearing. What he couldn't see was that he was being manipulated, used as a pawn in a much larger game. The colors receded from her skin, returning to the crystal, leaving her looking momentarily exhausted. The ability to share memories this way, to actually transfer experiences, is exceedingly rare and not entirely trusted. After Nalarian's death, suspicions fell on me. Had I somehow influenced his decisions? Used my gift to push my own agenda? That's why you were isolated, Elian said, understanding dawning. Not just because you became a widow, but because they feared you. Fear and respect often walk hand in hand on Azuria, she replied, her voice regaining strength. I chose seclusion partly to honor tradition, partly to escape the whispers. And then I saw you watching my world with such honest curiosity, and something long dormant awakened in me. Elian moved closer, taking her face gently between his hands. I don't fear what you can do, Naira. Perhaps you should, she whispered. Your superiors certainly would. Her eyes held his, filled with both warning and longing. The additional observers they send, they will not look at Azuria with your eyes. Elian, they will see resources to be acquired, advantages to be gained, and my people will resist. What can I do? He asked. In answer, Naira placed her palm against his chest, directly over his heart. A subtle warmth spread through him, followed by a strange sensation of expansion, as if his consciousness was simultaneously here and elsewhere. I can show you truths your instruments will never measure, she said. Knowledge your reports can never contain. But once shared, it cannot be unlearned, and it will force you to choose where your true allegiance lies. The Earth's transport vessel Hermes descended through Azuria's atmosphere with military precision, its bulk casting long shadows over the research station. From his vantage point on the observation deck, Elian watched with growing apprehension as personnel and equipment were methodically unloaded. Quite the show of force for a scientific expedition, remarked Dr. Keller, joining him at the viewport. Those don't look like standard research modules to me. She was right. Among the scientific equipment, Elian spotted several containers bearing the Severing ML, distinctive markings of Earth's resource acquisition, divisional department notorious for its aggressive extraction, methods on frontier worlds. Director. Harlow's voice came through the stations. Communication system. All senior staff, to briefing room 1. Our new colleagues have arrived. The briefing room felt uncomfortably crowded with the addition of the new mission leadership. Commander Victor Reyes, a square-jawed man with cold eyes, stood at the front beside a woman Elian recognized immediately, Dr. Sierra Ambrose, one of Earth's foremost xenobiologists whose reputation for brilliant research was matched only by her disregard for indigenous rights. "Let's dispense with the pleasantries," Reyes began, scanning the room with a calculated gaze. "Your preliminary work has identified numerous compounds with significant potential. Particularly promising are the bioluminescent properties of the aquatic flora and the crystalline formations in the western regions." Elian felt his mouth go dry. The western regions where Naira had shared her memories with him, where the most sacred Azurian sites were located. "We'll be implementing a more efficient collection protocol," Dr. Ambrose added, her tone suggesting no room for discussion. "The indigenous population has been officially notified of our expanded presence through their governing council." "And what was their response?" Elian asked, unable to keep the edge from his voice. Reyes and Ambrose exchanged a brief glance. "They expressed some concerns, which were duly noted," Reyes replied dismissively. "But Earth's needs must take priority. The medicinal applications alone justify our methods." After the briefing, Elian retreated to his lab, mind racing. Through their deepening connection, Nira had shown him the intricate relationships between Azuria's living systems. What the Earth team saw as separate resources to be harvested were actually integral parts of a planetary consciousness. The memory crystals, the bioluminescent flora, they weren't just unusual phenomena, but vital components of Azorian existence. His communication device vibrated. With an encrypted messages system he and Naira had established for emergencies, the message contained only 3 words: "Council chambers." Immediately. Slipping away from the station proved more difficult with the increased security presence. Elian had to wait until the shift change, fabricating a story about nocturnal sample collection that raised eyebrows but ultimately secured him clearance to leave the Azurian capital city. Lumeris had always maintained a policy of limited access for offworlders. As Elian approached its crystalline spires, he was met by 2 solemn guards who escorted him, without comment, through labyrinthian passages of living architecture structures that seemed to breathe and pulse with the same rhythm as the planet itself. The council chambers were a vast amphitheater carved from a single massive crystal, filled with dozens of Azurian elders arranged in concentric circles. Naira stood at the center, her formal attire marking her higher status despite her political isolation. Her eyes found his immediately, communicating volumes in a single glance. "Elian Reed of Earth," announced the chief elder, his voice resonating with unusual harmonics. "You have been summoned because Naira of House Zephyrin has made an unprecedented request on your behalf." Leon stepped forward, acutely aware of being the only human in a chamber of beings who viewed his species with increasing suspicion. "The council has been informed of your connection with Naira," continued the elder, his tone carefully neutral. "Under normal circumstances, such a liaison would be merely noted and monitored. However, these are not normal circumstances." Another elder rose, her silver hair elaborately braided with memory crystals. "Your people's new directive threatens sites sacred to our existence. The extraction methods they propose would irreparably damage the crystal networks that maintain our collective consciousness." "I understand," Elian replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "And I don't support these methods." "Yet you serve Earth," countered a third elder. "Your loyalty is presumed to lie with your own kind." Naira stepped forward. Elian has experienced the memory sharing. He understands what is at stake in ways no other human can. Murmurs rippled through the assembly at this revelation. Memory sharing with offworlders was taboo, a violation of ancient protocols. "You overstepped your authority," Naira, the chief elder said gravely. I did what was necessary, she responded, her chin lifting slightly, just as Nalarian would have done. At the mention of her late bondmate's name, the chamber fell silent. Elian sensed layers of political complexity he couldn't fully grasp. What Naira proposes is unprecedented, the female elder finally said. She suggests we use her gift to share critical knowledge with you, knowledge that would allow you to intervene with your own people without revealing our direct involvement. Understanding dawning. You want to give me information that would convince Earth to withdraw without revealing your abilities? She nodded. Scientific data that your instruments could plausibly have gathered. Evidence of how extraction would trigger catastrophic planetary reactions. But to make it convincing, I would need to fully understand the mechanisms myself, Elian finished, which means deeper memory sharing. The chief elder's expression became grave. Such extensive sharing creates a permanent neural bond, Elian read. You would carry Azurian memories and knowledge for the remainder of your life. The implications for both your mental health and our security are ... significant. There's something else you should know, Naira added softly. My first sharing with you has already begun a process that cannot be easily reversed. You've noticed changes in your perception, haven't you? Increased sensitivity to energy fields, dreams filled with memories not your own. Elian nodded slowly, recalling the strange sensations he'd been experiencing moments when he could almost see the flowing energy between living things. Nights filled with vivid dreams of places on Azuria he'd never physically visited. We proceed. These effects will intensify, she continued. You will never again be fully of Earth alone. Part of you will always belong to Azuria. The council chambers fell silent as all eyes turned to Elian, awaiting his decision in that moment of perfect clarity. Elian realized he had already chosen his path the first night by the lake, when he had placed his hand in Naira's. Every moment since had been leading him here to this impossible choice between worlds. I understand the consequences, he said firmly, and I consent to the sharing. The ceremony took place in the sacred crystal grove where Naira had first shared her memories. This time, all of the council elders were present, their combined energy focusing and amplifying the connection. As Naira's hands framed his face, Elian felt himself falling into her violet eyes. Tumbling through centuries of accumulated knowledge, the history of Azuria flowed into him, its formation from cosmic dust, the emergence of consciousness within its crystalline structures, the evolution of the Azurian people as extensions of that planetary mind. He experienced the intricate symbiosis between all living systems, felt the devastating consequences that would result from the Earth's extraction plans. Most intimately, he lived through Naira's personal journey, her childhood as a recognized memory keeper, her political marriage to Nalarian, her grief at his death, and finally, her unexpected awakening to new possibilities through her connection with a curious human scientist. When Elian finally returned to full awareness of his physical surroundings, hours had passed. He felt fundamentally changed, his consciousness expanded, and his perspective irrevocably altered. Naira knelt beside him, her expression both concerned and hopeful. It is done, announced the chief elder. The knowledge has been transferred. What happens now depends on your actions, Elian of Earth and Azuria. With newfound purpose, Elian returned to the research station the next morning. His mind now contained precisely the scientific evidence needed to prove that Earth's extraction plans would backfire, catastrophically data that seemed to come from his own research but actually originated in the collective knowledge of Azuria. He found Dr. Ambrose in the main laboratory, already directing the analysis of crystal samples. Dr. Reed, she acknowledged coolly. I was beginning to wonder if you'd abandoned your post. Actually, I've been conducting critical field research, he replied, transferring a data set to the main laboratory system. You need to see this immediately. One cycle of Azoria's twin moons later, the research station had been reduced to its original size, a small outpost dedicated to observation rather than exploitation. Earth Command had reluctantly accepted the evidence that Azuria's resources couldn't be harvested without catastrophic consequences, reclassifying the planet as a scientific preserve rather than a potential colony. For Elion, the passage of time had brought both challenges and revelations. The neural bond formed through Naira's memory sharing had continued to develop, granting him perceptions no human had ever experienced. He could now sense the subtle energy fields that connected all life on Azuria, could feel the planet's moods through changes in its crystalline networks, could even communicate wordlessly with some of its simpler life forms. These abilities made him an exceptional researcher, but also set him apart from his human colleagues. Only Director Harlow knew the full extent of his transformation. Maintaining his secret while ensuring his unprecedented insights benefited Earth's scientific understanding, his relationship with Naira had evolved as well, deepening into something neither human nor Azurian terminology could adequately describe. They were bondmates in the Azurian sense, their minds permanently linked through shared memory but also partners in the human tradition, finding joy in physical and emotional connection despite their physiological differences. Today, they stood together on a plateau overlooking both the human research station and the distant spires of Lumaris. The setting of both suns bathed the landscape in copper and gold, highlighting the purple hue of Naira's skin against the vivid green foliage. "The council has reached a decision," she said, her fingers intertwined with his. "They've accepted my proposal." Elion felt his heart quicken. "All of it." "All of it," she confirmed, a smile illuminating her features. "You will be granted the status of adopted consciousness, the first non-Azurian to hold such a position. And our union will be formally recognized." It was more than they had dared hope for. Traditional Azurian society operated on principles of genetic continuity and ancestral memory. For them to accept an off-worlder, especially one from a species that had recently attempted resource extraction, represented a fundamental shift in thinking. "What changed their minds?" Elion asked, though he could guess the answer. "You did," Naira replied simply. "Your actions protected our world without revealing our secrets." And ... Her hand moved to rest over his heart. "The bond between us has proven stronger and more harmonious than anyone predicted. The memory crystals respond to you now, almost as they do to me." It was true. During their private visits to the crystal groves, Elion had discovered he could not only receive memories, but also contribute his own aiding human perspectives to the ancient Azorian consciousness, creating a bridge between worlds that had never before existed. "There's something else," Naira continued, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "The genetic compatibility tests were completed yesterday."
Oh, yeah.
Elion held his breath. This had been the greatest uncertainty, whether their different species could ever create life together. "With certain modifications to the gestation process, it's possible," she said, her eyes shining with emotion. "Not easy, but possible. Our child would be the first of an entirely new lineage, neither fully human nor fully Azurian, but something wonderful and new." Joy surged through Elion, followed immediately by practical concerns. "What about Earth? My position here is secure for now. But if Command learns about this, Director Harlow has already contacted me," Naira interrupted gently. "She anticipated this development and has prepared documentation classifying our potential child as a subject of long-term xenobiological research, bureaucratic protection and language your people will respect." Elion laughed, suddenly understanding why the usually stern director had given him such a knowing look during their last meeting. "She's more perceptive than I realized." "She cares about you," Naira observed. "Perhaps she sees in us a future she once hoped for herself." The suns dipped below the horizon, signaling the beginning of Azuria's brief but dramatic twilight. The sky erupted in swirls of color as charged particles in the atmosphere responded to the changing magnetic fields, creating auroras that danced from horizon to horizon. Hand in hand, they walked down from the plateau toward the lake where they had first met. The corallis flowers were beginning to emerge, their bioluminescence activating as darkness fell. "Do you ever regret it?" Naira asked suddenly. "Choosing to stay? Becoming something neither world fully understands?" Elion considered the question seriously, as he did all her questions. "On Earth, I studied life, but remained separate from its the objective observer. Here, with you, I've learned to be part of the systems I study." He squeezed her hand gently. How could I regret becoming more connected, more alive? They reached the lakeshore just as the corallis reached full bloom, their light creating pathways across the water's surface. Unlike that first night, Elian could now perceive the subtle harmonics they generated, could feel their response to his and Naira's presence. The ceremony will take place here, Naira said. Where we first connected? The council thought it fitting. And after? Elian asked. Thinking of the future, they were building a future that would challenge both their worlds to expand their definitions of life, consciousness, and belonging. Naira's eyes met his, violet depths containing memories both ancient and new. After, we continue what we've begun, creating understanding between worlds, showing that differences need not divide us. Her hand rested briefly on her abdomen, a gesture of possibility. And perhaps we create new life that carries the best of both our kinds. As if responding to her words, the coralli's flowers began a new pattern, spiraling together in a dance more complex than Elian had ever witnessed. The lake's surface shimmered with coordinated light, creating symbols that combined Azurian patterns with distinctly earth-inspired geometria. Visual representation of the convergence they embodied. The neural bond between them hummed with shared emotion as they stepped into the shallows. Water, illuminated by bioluminescence, swirled around their ankles, responding to their presence. Above them, the twin moons and countless stars witnessed their embrace, two beings from distant worlds who had found in each other not just love, but a new understanding of what connection truly meant. Our story's just beginning, Naira whispered against his lips, and it will ripple across the cosmos. Elian knew she was right. What they had discovered together, the possibility of profound union, across seemingly insurmountable differences, would eventually transform both their worlds and perhaps others beyond. The barriers between species, between planets, between different forms of consciousness were more permeable than anyone had imagined. As they stood together under Azoria's alien sky, surrounded by the glowing evidence of life's endless capacity for connection, Elian understood the true meaning of Naira's first whispered invitation. Join me. She hadn't simply been asking him to observe a bioluminescent display. She had been inviting him into a new way of being, one where the boundaries between observer and observed, between self and other, between human and alien, dissolved into something greater than the sum of their parts. And he had accepted, stepping willingly into the beautiful unknown.